Hey guys, it is Melissa and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Melissa Ellen and I started doing true crime videos at the beginning of this year. My intention is to bring awareness to missing cases and unsolved cases and to talk about solved cases that have a message in them, something we can talk about, something we can learn that will help in future cases. And I want to talk about the McStay family. I remember this case very clearly. It happened February 4th of 2010, and my son was born on February 11th of 2010. So this was like that week where I was like at home and you're not doing anything. And I was like binge watching TV. And I remember when this case happened, there was a family that went missing out of an area near San Diego, California. It was a family of four, husband, wife, and two children, and they literally vanished. And there was surveillance video. Looked like the family had gone to Mexico, but it made no sense. And they had like $100,000 in the bank that was never touched. Their bodies were eventually discovered years later. And I had kind of lost track of the case after that. I followed it really closely in those first couple of months. I was like, that's just crazy. Where could they have gone? Like, it's such a twisting story that you just can't imagine how this happened and why they hadn't been found. And it took years to solve this case. And today, on June 10th of 2019, there was a verdict read in the case of the McStay family. So that's what we're going to talk about because they disappeared, they were found, and there was an arrest, and today there was a conviction. So I want to share this case with you guys because it brings hope. If anything, there's so many cases out there where we have a missing person who still has not been found. Hope that they will be found. And for someone who got away with murder for a very long time is finally convicted, and he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison, if not the death penalty. So let's go ahead and jump right into this video. I'm going to tell you guys about the story of the McStay family. Okay, this took place in Fallbook, California, which is pretty close to San Diego, California, and which, if you're not familiar, just in case you're not from California, which is right at the Mexico border. Okay, at the time of the disappearance on February 4th of 2010, Joseph McStay was 40 years old. Summer McStay was reported to be 43 years old. We'll talk about that in a minute. And they had two children, Gianni and Joseph Jr. Gianni was 4 years old and Joseph Jr. was 3 years old. The family lived in their home that they had recently purchased in Fallbrook, California, and they had two dogs by the name of Digger and Bear. And it's kind of like, why are you telling us all of this? It all kind of fits in. You need to know this information, I promise. I'm going to move my book over here so I quit looking that way. Now, Summer was a licensed real estate agent, but from everything I read, she wasn't really working at the time. Like full time. She was mostly focused on raising her two sons. They were both very dedicated, very devoted parents, very protective of their children, very they were young though still. They were only 3 and 4, so they were very protective parents, very involved in what was going on. They spent a lot of time at the beach and just all involved, a lot of children activities. And Joseph had started a very successful water fountain company. What had happened is I think it was Joseph's father, when I heard this story a long time ago. He had been somewhere and he had seen that there were these fountains that people were selling, and they were selling them for a lot of money. And he realized that he could make them for a lot cheaper and sell them himself. So this company was self-started. He started just making these fountains and he started selling them, and it just kept growing. At the time of his disappearance, I believe it was on that exact day or the day before, he had landed a massive deal for thousands of dollars where he was going to provide these fountains to a client. So he had a very successful business, not just like, it wasn't just like selling them out of the back of his trunk or anything. Like, he really had a very up and coming company where he was making a lot of money. He had brought in a business partner, and this man's name was Chase Merritt, but he went by Chase. So Chase became Joseph's business partner in his company, which was called Earth Inspired Fountains. So from what can be tracked, on the date of February 4th, 2010, Joseph and Summer and their two children are at home. On that day, Joseph had had lunch with his business partner, Chase. They had discussed this massive deal that was going on. Kind of trying to figure out how to throw the timeline in to not like, there's a plot twist, but like, I'm going to give it all away because that's what I do. And so Chase was Joseph's business partner, but Chase had a bad history. He had been convicted in burglaries. He had been convicted of receiving stolen goods. In fact, in 2001, he had been convicted of stealing some welding equipment, which was worth $32,000. So Chase had a lot of issues with money. It came out later that Joseph had lended him $32,000 to pay off a debt. And at the time of their disappearance, Chase was also $20,000 in debt to the IRS. So he had a lot of problems with money. He had gambling issues. So they had met that day and to discuss this huge deal that had come up. There were also reports that, so what was happening is that Joseph was designing them and helping build them, but Chase was mostly in charge of the building. And apparently they were getting a lot of returns on the fountains. There were some issues with quality, with inspections. So some things were kind of starting to rumble. There was a woman who was interviewed that was involved. I believe she was one of their distributors or a client, and mentioned that a lot of the fountains had defects. This was becoming kind of an issue. So it's believed that Joseph was meeting with Chase to talk about that. But it kind of goes back and forth on who you talk to. So, but they met that day and they had lunch, and then they parted ways. According to Chase, in his interview with CNN that he did after the disappearance, he said he was definitely the last person that Joseph saw that day. Joseph did have some phone conversations with some other people, but by all accounts, he left that lunch and then he went home, and that's where he was that evening. At 8:30 that evening, there is a record of Joseph's phone attempting to call Chase, but Chase did not answer. He said that he was with his girlfriend watching a movie, and so he decided to ignore the call. That call was not answered, and that was the last known contact from Joseph. So what happened is, a couple days later, Chase eventually reached out to Joseph's mom and said, hey, I haven't been able to get a hold of Joseph for a couple of days. According to Joseph's mother, she reached out to someone else and said, hey, go by there and check and see if their dogs are there. Like, what's going on? I can't get a hold of them. They didn't live really close together. So eventually, at some point in time, she sends her son, Michael, to go to their house and be like, break the window if you have to, like, figure it out. What's going on? Get into the house. He says he goes by there and he's able to gain entrance into the house. I saw it 3 different ways. I heard that the door was open, but that one didn't seem right. Mostly, I heard that the back window was open, and I also heard that he broke the window to get in. Either way, Michael McStay, Joseph's brother, gets into the house. That caused a lot of problems. Until this case came to the end, you're going to see that there were a lot of twists and turns, and this is when it's the worst, because there were so many accusations against so many people, and now we know that that's not what happened. So Michael McStay, the brother, gets into the house. So he goes in through the back window, however he got in, and he doesn't see anything wrong in the house. Like, he doesn't find anything gruesome or discover anything. He can't quite figure out what's going on. But he does find that there's eggs left out on the counter, so they're now rotten. They're just sitting on the counter like they were getting ready to be cooked. There's children's bowls of popcorn, what looks like children's bowls of popcorn on the couch. There's other groceries out. The trash can is full, and the 2 dogs are out in the backyard, which didn't seem quite right for them, because they wouldn't have just left their dogs out in the backyard uncared for without food or water. So at this point, they're all kind of confused. Like, what's going on? Where are they? They're trying to get a hold of them. But you just don't suspect that, like, an entire family has been taken and something's happened to them. Like, you're thinking, like, they must have gone somewhere and forgot to tell someone. They forgot to, like, what happened? Where are they? According to Michael McStay, Joseph's brother, he eventually gets a call from animal control that says that they're going to take the dogs. And this was Digger and Bear, the 2 dogs that were in the backyard. That they're going to remove the dogs because the dogs have been left abandoned in the backyard with no food or water for over a week. This is when Michael's like, okay, something's not right. And he goes to the San Diego Sheriff's Department and reports them as missing. And this took place on February 15th. So just to make sure we got the timeline, they went missing on February 4th. The family did not actually enter the house until February 13th, 9 days later. They just didn't know what was going on. So they finally enter the house. They realize they're not there. They're still not there. And then on February 15th, once they realize the dogs are being taken, they really can't figure out where they are, they do go and report them as missing. On February 19th, they did receive a search warrant to search the McStay family home, and they did go in and search. They found no signs of foul play. They did not find blood spatter. They did not find a weapon. They did not find anything broken to indicate that something happened. But they did notice things didn't seem right. The dogs being left, the food being left out on the counter, the food in the trash can. Now remember, I said some things got wonky. So I was watching another documentary. I'm going to try and find it because I can't remember which one it was called. And there's so many out there. It's really hard to dig through. And there was a lot of questions about kind of looking at the brother, because the brother was the first one to go into the house. And then afterwards, the brother accessed some of the money in order to pay like their mortgage and things like that. And he said, whoa, I was just trying, like, I don't know where they're at. And I'm thinking maybe they're coming back. Like, I don't want their house to be gone. Like, I'm just trying to cover their bases. Like, I'm not doing anything funky. The mom apparently, see, the house was never sealed up. It was never sealed up. They searched it and that was it. So the mom, apparently, she comes into the house and it's not sealed. It's not a crime scene. All she knows is that her family's missing. And apparently when she was at the house, the smell of the rotten trash was so bad that she took the trash out. Apparently she took the trash out and cleaned off the counters just to get rid of like the stench. And there was a lot of people that were speculating like, oh, what was she cleaning up? What was going on? And she's just like, this wasn't a crime scene. Nothing was sealed. Same with the brother. It's like, I didn't break into a crime scene. Like, nobody was there. I went in to find out what's going on with my brother and his family. So that was one of the things that kind of got people kind of looking. There's a lot of theories around that were going on with them. But at the end of the day, like, that money wasn't touched other than for what they said it was touched for. They helped pay some of the bills in order to make sure that the house wasn't lost in the meantime. Okay, so now police are getting involved. They realized that when they realized the neighbor's surveillance video on February 4th at 7:47. So prior to the phone call that Joseph supposedly made, because we don't know if Joseph made the phone call. So after police had conducted the search warrant on the home, they started to look at the neighbor's surveillance and everything like that. They realized that the neighbor had a surveillance camera that caught on February 4th what appears to be their car, because all they could see was, I believe Wikipedia said it was the bottom 18 inches of the car. But they can see what they assume is the McStay family car leaving their residence, backing out and leaving. They can't see who's in the car or anything like that, but the car appears to leave from their residence and never returns. And so they decide to put out, obviously, to look for this vehicle. And they enter the vehicle into the system and they find out, lo and behold, several days prior, it had been towed. What they could piece together is that on February 8th, so 4 days after the McStays disappeared, their vehicle was driven and parked at a strip mall right next to the Mexican border, where you could literally walk from the strip mall to the border and walk across. So on February 8th, between 5:30 and 7, their vehicle was parked at that strip mall. Now, nobody knows who parked it there. They don't have any camera of that. That's just, there's a towing company that watches that lot. So they know kind of ish when cars come in so that they can track them so that they could tow them if they're parked there for too long. At 11 p.m. on February 8th, that car was towed from that strip mall, and it had been sitting in a tow yard the entire time. Just so frustrating. If you have a missing person, even if you don't know where they're at, why isn't there like tag put into the system immediately? Like, we just dealt with another case that was covered in parking tickets, and the car had been sitting there for a week of a missing person. The Marlene Ochoa case. Like, I don't understand how they don't, like, a car was towed, which means the towing company has to contact the police department to tell them that they towed a car. That way, when a person calls and says, my car was stolen, they can immediately say, no, it wasn't stolen, it was towed, and it's here. So how? So they realize that the car is in the tow yard, right? Okay. They go and they get the car, and they piece together the idea that maybe the McStay family decided to park their car at the strip mall and walk across the border to Mexico and leave and start a whole new life. Okay. Let's go over this idea, because this was a working theory for a very long time. So police start to work with this theory, and the police department decides to go through all of the surveillance videos of the crossing into Mexico. Now, they have a camera system, and it's pretty good, but what they found was on February 8th, there was a man and a woman with 2 children walking across the border into Mexico around the time that the McStay family would have walked across. I remember this because I was like, oh my goodness, that's crazy. I can't believe I forever thought that this was them. Like, I remember thinking, just trying to rack my brain with like what could have been going on in their life that they packed up their children and went to Mexico to get away. And there were a couple of other things that came out. On the McStay family's home computer, there were actual searches done. And these searches done were things like Spanish lessons for children. What do children need to cross the border to go into Mexico? So it definitely looked like they were planning something to go to Mexico. For some reason, they were going to Mexico. But there were a couple different things that didn't match up. First of all, first and foremost, this is the biggest red flag that there is. They had $100,000 in the bank. $100,000. $100,000 in the bank. Untouched. Never touched it. They did not make any withdrawals before leaving. They did not, nothing. There was no withdrawal of this money and they never came back for it. That made no sense to me. Nobody walks away from $100,000 unless they've got millions somewhere else. But they looked and they didn't have that kind of money. Yeah, they had money, but not millions to just disappear and never be seen again. The other thing is that Joseph's circle of people were like, Joseph was not okay with Mexico. He knew about the cartels. He knew about everything that goes down there. He would not have taken his children to Mexico, especially in the evening. You know, it was like 8, 9 o'clock at night. He would not walk his children into Mexico. And then we talk about Summer McStay. Okay, so then this started throwing up a lot of red flags. Summer McStay had changed her name several times. It even came out after their disappearance that she was 11 years older than everyone thought she was. When she was born, her name was Virginia Lisa Aranda, and she eventually changed her name to Summer Martelli. She did Summer Andre Martelli. Like, there was a bunch of different combos of her name. There's still a lot of mystery around why she did that. There was some evidence that came out that she did have a volatile ex that was pretty much obsessed with her. So I don't know if that had to do with it. I don't know what would make her change her name so often. They never really figured it out what she was hiding from. And so obviously that was a big mystery because they're thinking maybe Summer was running from something and they decided to leave to Mexico. Her sister really didn't believe that was an option. She said that Summer's passport was expired, which is not, and anybody knows that you can get into Mexico without a passport. She said that Summer was petrified of Mexico too. Just like Joseph, they were uncomfortable. They knew about the life of Mexico and cartels and drug trade and everything that goes on there, that they were so protective of their children. They were like doting parents. And they wanted them always safe and always taken care of. They would not literally this late at night walk their children into Mexico. That made no sense unless there was like an extreme danger that nobody knew about. So I always wondered, like, what did she get involved in? What was she running from? What was she hiding from? Because that was the only thing I could think of that would make any sense why they would walk their babies into Mexico. Like, what? And not tell anyone and not take any of their money with them. Like, it made no sense. And they just bought this house. So kind of wonky, kind of hard to explain. They also didn't take their car. Like, all kinds of things make you just, it doesn't make sense. On November 11th of 2013, the bodies of the McStay family were discovered in Victorville, California. A motorcyclist was out riding bikes out in the area. It's a very desolate desert area, and came upon 2 shallow graves. In the graves, they did find that Joseph was in one grave with one of the boys, and Summer was one grave with one of the boys. In her grave, there was a 3-pound sledgehammer. It was determined that the family was bludgeoned, blunt force trauma with the sledgehammer, which is brutal, to say the least. Once the bodies were discovered, Patrick McStay, the father of Joseph, did file a formal complaint against the San Diego Sheriff's Department office. Very disappointed because in April of 2013, they had officially released that they had concluded that the McStay family had left and gone to Mexico and that they were no longer searching for them. So, of course, he was very upset, because they never believed that that's what happened. And it turns out it is not what happened, that they had been out in the desert this entire time. 1 year later, on November 7th of 2014, Charles Chase Merritt, the business partner, was arrested on 4 counts of first-degree murder. They had gone through and done some digging, and when they dug into the car that was left abandoned a little further, they actually found that Chase's DNA was in the vehicle, which shouldn't have been there because this wasn't a vehicle he had ridden in. They also, at the site, they did find that there were tire tracks. They were consistent with Chase's truck. However, obviously other trucks had been out there and it had been a very long time. And most importantly, they started going back and digging into the financial records. And Chase had spent over $21,000 of the money that was in that account. And he said it was to cover business expenses, but it didn't. He went on a gambling spree right after they disappeared. And it was just really obvious. When people started digging in, they found that, he had this big debt to Joseph that he had not paid, and that Joseph was frustrated about it, and that Chase had taken more money. And then as soon as the family was gone, he's taking more money out of the account. Chase pled not guilty. He went through, I believe, 5 different attorneys trying to fight this case, and ultimately the verdict was reached on Friday, the 7th of June of 2019, and it was read this morning at 10 a.m. on June 10th of 2019. He has been convicted and found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder. The prosecution has said that they will go after the death penalty. He is 63. I believe he's 62 or 63 years old, so I don't know what'll happen by the time. It feels like the death penalty, like I don't even understand why they give it anymore because they don't do it. I'm not even going to get into that. I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail down in the comments about death penalty. You don't want to know my opinion. I'm not going to give it. But ultimately, starting tomorrow on June 11th, 2019, they will start with the penalty phase of the trial. So what I will do is, that's not going to be done before I put this video up because I'm probably going to put it up tomorrow morning. I will make sure that when they do sentence him, that I will leave it as the top pinned comment down below so that you can see. It is truly crazy to me that a family can be missing for so many years and to have no answers. Where did they go? And now, unfortunately, we know where they went. They were out there in the desert. They'd been murdered. And it is lovely, though, to see the person who did this held accountable, because that's not okay. He took a whole family, and I will never understand why he harmed the children. There's just no reason. There's not a lot of answers about how he got them out of the house that evening or when they left. The obvious theory is that he had to remove them at gunpoint, or he had to have called them and urged them to come to him quickly, because there was just food left out, which wouldn't have been normal for them to leave the house with food. There was no signs of a struggle. So however he did it, he orchestrated it in some way that he got them out of the household very quickly without a fight in the house. Another side note to throw out there, because I know, I haven't even dug far enough, but I know there are going to be these people who literally think he's innocent. When he was interviewed on CNN, they even said that they didn't suspect him. That he was calm, he was relaxed, he was open. He was like, yeah, I was the last person to be seen with them. I definitely was. Because you murdered him. He said that he had taken a polygraph, and they asked him if he passed. And he's like, I guess I assume I did. Of course I did. But I haven't heard anything back from them. So, and I watched the interview, and there's no part of him that seemed. But then there were some things that he said that started making it kind of like, apparently prior to them going missing, Joseph had been ill. He had been experiencing some vertigo. He was nauseous. He was sick. He wasn't in good health. The family knew about this, and they all were like, yeah, it was stress. He had stress going on. Like, that's what was going on. But Chase, and he's the only one who said this, Chase said that Joseph confided in him that he thought that his wife, Summer, was poisoning him. They obviously never found any evidence of this whatsoever. Summer was known as being kind of a, maybe controlling or bossy or moody. She had apparently been looking into homeopathic remedies for anger issues. So I don't know how serious this was. I don't know if this was like, God, we all go through things in our life. We all go through phases. She had 2 young children. Husband's got a booming company. She was a real estate agent. Now she's kind of, taking care of kids. So maybe she just had some anger. Maybe she was just going through some changes, life changes, whatever it was. But it doesn't seem that it was in any way to the level of her poisoning her husband. And there didn't seem to be any reason she'd want to. So that, and it kind of just put a limelight on Chase when he made this like crazy, outlandish accusation, kind of like trying to put the blame on someone else, as if maybe Summer had done something to all of them and she had taken them away. That theory never fell with me. I couldn't picture how she would have mastermind this whole plan to get rid of her husband and take her 2 children and get them to Mexico. And like that one never made sense to me, but that's kind of the direction Chase was pointing. And I think that's one of those things that really put a limelight on him. So I think that gives you guys a rundown of the McStay family. So I always like to give you guys as much of an overview as I can, and then give you some of the facts and theories. And then if you want to go research in further, there are things that I say this in every video because somebody will leave a comment like, oh, why didn't you talk about this? Because it was too far field, too far fetched, too far field, left field, far fetched, whatever. You get my point. And I'm not comfortable putting in a video because I'm afraid putting it in a video, someone will be like, oh, you think that's true? No, I don't think it's true. But I will talk about it with you guys in the comment section below. So let me know what crazy theories you had heard before we figured this out. Let me know. I have no judgment whatsoever if you think Chase didn't do it, because I definitely have seen some, you know what, in fact, I know we're still a small channel. I'm going to put a poll up here for you guys. So tell me, do you think Chase did it? I mean, he's been convicted. Obviously, a lot of people think he did it. But I know that there's a lot of people who think that there's a possibility that someone else did it and he's getting caught up, because at the end of the day, there wasn't a lot of physical evidence. There was his DNA in the car, but that's it. I absolutely think he did it. Just so you know, like that's my opinion. And I thought it for a while, and I always thought it was interesting, but I was like, no, there's no way he would have. No, a family of 4. No, it had to have been some crazy person. Apparently he did. So let me know what you guys are thinking. And again, thank you guys again so much for watching my videos. I appreciate it every day. I literally appreciate you guys. So do me a favor, guys, hug your babies, hug your loves. Life is literally so precious. Take advantage of every minute of every day, and I will see you guys in my next video.